All right, on Friday we talked about, I asked you to complete these worksheets for homework, these triangles, right triangles, just basically give you some extra practice. We'll go through the answers real quickly here. We have angle G is 63 degrees, little g is 13 units. We want to find E and D. So once again, we're going to go through the same mental madness of what we did on Friday. Here's the angle we know, here's the side we know, and we want to find little e. So which trig ratio relates the angle we know to the side we know, we want to find? Well, this is opposite over hypotenuse, so we have the sine of 63 degrees is equal to 13 over e, opposite over hypotenuse. Once again, the variable's in the denominator, so this gives you one extra step that you have to do. We could multiply both sides by e. So we have e sine of 63 is equal to 13, and they divide by sine of 63, sine of 63. So we have 13 divided by sine of 63, which should come down to 14.59 for E. And then for D, which trig ratio relates the side we know, the side we want to find to the angle we know, that would be opposite over adjacent. So we have tangent of 63 is equal to 13 over D. Once again, we're going to be multiplying both sides by D divided by tangent of 63. So D is equal to 13 divided by tangent of 63. That comes down to 6.62. Okay, as your solutions. Going to the back. Once again, we can use our good old buddy Pythagoras to find A. So we have A squared is equal to 11 squared. Oopsie. A squared plus 11 squared is equal to 15 squared. Subtracting 11 squared from both sides. We have 15 squared minus 11 squared. That gives us 104. So A is equal to square root of 104. See, perfect square factor, that would be a value of 4. Square root of 4, square root of 26. So we have 2 square root of 26 with that. Measure of angle A, which trig ratio relates angle A to the side we know, two sides we know. This is adjacent, this is hypotenuse, so we have the cosine of angle A is equal to 11 over 15. To get rid of cosine, we could take our inverse cosine. So we have the inverse cosine of 11 divided by 15. We should come down to 42.83. And if I take these two, I should add up to something very close to 90 degrees. Likewise, on the bottom, we have D is 7. We have G is 10. We want to solve for little t. We can use a good old buddy Pythagoras again, where we have 10 squared plus 7 squared is equal to t squared. So we have 100 plus 49 equals t squared. So t equals square root of 149. For angle G, which trig ratio relates these two sides of this angle? Well, these are the two legs, so we have tangent of angle G is equal to 10 over 7. We could take our inverse tangent of both sides. So we have the inverse tangent of 10 divided by 7. We come down to 55 degrees for angle G. 55.00 or 0.1. We could do the same trig ratio for angle D. It's just a reciprocal. Tangent angle D is equal to 7 over 10. Inverse tangent of 7 over 10. We get 34.99. And once again, these two should add up to 180 degrees. Okay, going into today's assignment. We won't worry about the first part here because we've done these triangles already. We'll just go down the bottom here. We have two definitions that will be used in our problems. Angle of depression and angle of elevation. When we talk about the angle of depression, it's an angle formed by a horizontal line of sight and a line of sight to an object that is below. The angle formed by the horizontal line of sight and the line of sight to an object that is below. This typically occurs when you are elevated. You're standing on a hill, standing in a plane, sitting on a plane, flying in a plane, in a tree somewhere. When you are elevated. So if we are elevated, we have a line of sight. Here's your horizontal line of sight. And if we are looking at some bear down below or turtle, we have our line of sight to this object that is below us. This here is your angle of depression. This is your angle of depression. Another term that will be utilized in these problems is what is called an angle of elevation. It's the exact same definition, except for we change the last word from below to above. And I know we're not supposed to end sentences with above and below, but I do. I'm in math class. It's the angle formed by a horizontal line of sight and the line of sight to an object that is above. The angle formed by the horizontal line of sight and the line of sight to an object that is above. So once again, we have our horizontal line of sight. And if we're looking at an object that is above us, we have our plane or our flying shark, whatever you want to look at it as. This here here's your horizontal line of sight. Here's a line of sight to an object that's above. The angle that is formed here, this is your angle of elevation. Angle of elevation is used to when looking at an object that's above. Angle of depression is used when you're looking at an object that is below you. Take a look at a couple problems here. All your problems that you're going to have for homework are going to be story problems. All those problems you're going to be able to form a right angle. And when you form that right angle, you'll be able to form a right triangle. When you form a right triangle, then you'll be able to solve the right triangle problem like we did on Friday, using your sine, cosine, and tangent. So everything we did on Friday at the beginning of this class, you're going to be utilized again. The only thing that's going to be different now is you're going to have to draw the right triangle and put in the values. Cowboy Bob is 2 miles away from the base of Mount Rushmore. Obviously, this is not drawn to scale. If the angle of elevation at the top of Mount Rushmore is measured to be 40 degrees, how tall is Mount Rushmore? So what we'll do is, we got Cowboy Bob over here. We will look at top of George's head, because that looks like the tallest here. Okay. Here is our line of sight to the top of George's head. Here is our horizontal line of sight. We are given that the angle of elevation is 40 degrees. So over here, here's our horizontal to a line of sight to an object above. This is a 40-degree angle. We want to know how tall Mount Rushmore is. So when we're talking about height, we're talking about straight up and down. So we're looking at this height right here. What is this height? Well, what we have formed is a handy-dandy little right triangle. We know Cowboy Bob is 2 miles away from the base of Mount Rushmore, so we're going to put our 2 miles in here. Now, typically, height is not going to be measured in miles. It's going to be measured in yards or in feet. We have to know a conversion. 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. So if I have 2 miles there, we have a total of 10,560 feet. So with this right triangle, once again, we want to know height. So we look at our angle. We know the side we want to find and the side we know. Which trig ratio relates the angle we know, the side we know, side we want to find? Write yourself down a trig ratio. Okay? The sine, or whatever trig ratio we have of this angle, 40 degrees, is equal to what ratio here within the triangle? We should have the tangent of 40 degrees because this is opposite, this is adjacent. So we have the tangent of 40 degrees is equal to h over the 10,560. Now we want to solve for h. So go ahead and solve for h. What do you do to both sides is you get h by itself. So we we should be multiplying both sides by 10,560. So we have 10,560 times the tangent of 40. You should come down to 8,860.9 feet. Second problem, we got a skateboarder skating down the top of the 746-foot tower of the Golden Gate Bridge. An alligator in the water below. And spots an alligator in the water below. The angle of depression he estimated to be about 35 degrees. How far is the alligator from the base of the tower? Okay, so we got our thrill seeker, we got our skateboarder for life here. He's going to skate down the wires of the Golden Gate Bridge. He spots Wally Gator down here. So this is his line of sight to the object. We have an angle depression of 35 degrees. So this is what you have to really watch out for. Because the angle depression is the angle formed by the horizontal line of sight and the line of sight to the object below. So this here is your angle depression of 35 degrees. We know the height of this tower. And we want to know what is the distance Wally Gator is from the tower. So the height of this tower is 746 feet. And we want to find what this distance is. Now the problem we run into here is I have my triangle that I formed, and it's a right triangle, so I can use sine, cosine, tangent. But the angle of depression is not in the triangle. Okay, this angle of depression is 35 degrees, and it's outside the triangle here. Okay, this is our angle of depression. So we need to get that angle within the triangle somehow. Well, we have two ways of dealing with it. We can say, well, this is 35. We can use the idea of this is the complement to find the measure of this angle. Or we could take a look at, we have a horizontal line here and a horizontal line down here. These two lines are parallel. Since they're horizontal, we have a transversal, which is the red dashed line. If we have a transversal, the red dashed line, we have two parallel lines. We can use what we call in geometry alternate interior angles and get this angle to be 35 degrees also. Okay, so we can use our alternate interior angles there to be able to say we have the angles that are congruent. Two parallel lines cut by a transversal. Alternate interior angles are congruent, which now pulls our angle within the triangle. And if you think about this, the angle of depression of an object above to an object below has to be equal to the angle of elevation from the object below back up to the object above them. So if I take a look at Wally Gator down here, the angle of elevation for Wally Gator to our skateboarder for life up here has to be the same angle of 35 degrees. That line does not change. So now we go back to what is the trig ratio relates this angle to the side we know and the side we want to find. Go ahead and write yourself a trig ratio there, which trig ratio of 35 degrees is equal to what over what? we should have the tangent there because we have opposite and adjacent again. We have 746 over D. Now solve for D. Okay, now remember, we have D, our variables now in the denominator. How do we solve this problem? Go ahead and solve for D. Check your answers with somebody around you. So we're going to multiply both sides by D and then divide by tangent of 35. So D should equal 746 divided by tangent of 30, 1065.4 feet. Get your homework. You should have time to start your homework now. You have some various problems on page 27 to 34. You have 3, 5, 6, 11, 12, 15, 17, and 18. Now, each one of these problems, you're going to draw a right triangle for. So you need to get a right triangle down. You need to get a picture down of a right triangle if you want to be very artistic, because they are story problems and captivate what's being said in the story problem. That is great. Use your artistic talents to be able to do that. That is fine. Stick figures work. You see my stick figures, my flying sharks. That's the best I could do. But this homework is also on the back of the board, or back board, so you can get started on your homework.